fine, mighty fine. Welcome to All Guitars Buzz, the weekly guitar-centric podcast that dives into a variety of topics, including guitar repair, building, what's on my bench, guitar news worth mentioning, customer stories, buying, selling, trading, along with existential philosophical breakthroughs. If this sounds like something you would be into, please stick around. I have an email, allguitarsbuzz@gmail.com. I have an upcoming show Sunday, July 26th at Nate's Garden Grill, brunch, noon to 2. Bring your friends. I played about a month ago at Nate's, same block, and it turned out great. There was a consistent flow of people, and of course, it's always nice when those folks throw in the tips. Always appreciate that. My band, the Black Jackets, supported the Meteors, those are in quotations, at the Tower Bar about a month ago, and the Meteors never played that show. And so I want to read to you a screenshot that the promoter posted of the singer of the Meteors, Paul Finnick, and what he said to the people of San Diego and the Tower. And then the promoter wrote his 2 cents. So here's what Finnick says. Apologies to our audience and the people of San Diego. It has proven to be impossible to work with this venue. The lack of facilities, stage size, venue capacity, and numerous other details are proving impossible to overcome. We always try our hardest to work with any reasonable limit, but this is beyond even us. Having driven 14 hours to get here in Lobo, flying in from Texas at obviously our own expense, we are 1,000% disappointed, but are unable to find a solution. Hope to see you all at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Hollywood tomorrow. Sincerely, the Meteors. And here is what the promoter wrote about that post. He said, unfortunately, the Motors canceled tonight at the Tower Bar. And just to clarify, when the show was booked, they understood there was no green room. Still, the Tower provided a space for them as a green room. They showed up to the venue and did not like the space provided, packed their stuff, and left. Tried their hardest, impossible to overcome. None of this is true. After they left, and now they mention issues with capacity, yet they did not even sell out the Tower on a Wednesday night. So it was a packed house, and by default, my band was the headliner, and it was a killer show. Local band, the Busted Coffins, opened up, and it was just a great night, despite the Meteors not liking the venue and leaving. So, yeah, how do you like them apples? More lawsuit talk. This is more about comments on my last podcast regarding the Fender lawsuit Europe thing. Jake comments, yes, the fake outrage over Fender is ridiculous. It seemed to me like a memo went out to every YouTube guitar influencer, got a marching order to bash Fender, and did exactly as they were told. Personally, I unsubscribed from any I had a subscription with, and don't waste your time watching any of their videos. C. David comments, this is Fender's play authentic moment. Those of us who have been around for a while have seen this movie before. Does make good YouTube content though. And then Don comments, Julie London is contemporary, LOL. So those are some of the comments from the last podcast, and I agree. Julie London is not contemporary. But also, all this Fender stuff, whenever it gets brought up, it's just everybody starts sighing because now they're going to have to give their opinion about it. And who cares, right? I heard through the grapevine, I've kind of quit following along with this whole thing, but customers have told me now that I guess Fender sent a cease and desist to Australia, someone in Australia, over the wording of a listing, and they want it to say S-type and T-type, and again, how Fender proceeds is going to dictate, what their reputation is from this point forward. What's on my bench? I had a Squier Strat that I don't remember. This stuff is from like a month ago now, but I have a note. It says setup and shim. interesting. I did a Jackson, and I did 10 to 52s in D standard, and I wrote gunky. So this is one that I had to use gloves for. And when I say gunky, it is just like someone ate a couple pound of ribs, didn't wash their hands, and they waited for that barbecue sauce to kind of solidify on their hands, and then decided to play their guitar for years. So that's how it looked, super gross. And it does cross my mind that, you know, sometimes people don't want their guitar cleaned, and if you do, they'll say that you stole their tone. That's a true story. I told it in a few episodes back. But you know, my response to that, and I'm thinking about it as I'm cleaning it, is this is unsanitary and disgusting. And you're expecting me to get intimate with this guitar and set up every little thing that can be adjusted and touch every little piece of this guitar. You know, I bet you if you were to walk into those people's houses, it would just be a mess. I'd hate to see what the inside of their car looks like, the steering wheel, etc. Gross. So I cleaned it. I set it up 10 to 52. I took in an SG. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is an interesting story. This might fall really under the customer stories, but I'll go ahead and tell it now. So a guy came in, and I'll use a phrase from all those Don Knotts 60s movies, Ghost of Mr. Chicken, Reluctant Astronaut, Love God. They always described Don Knotts as keyed up. So this guy was all keyed up, and he brought in an SG, and it had a headstock brake, but he repaired it on the road, repaired it, quote unquote. But the brake was still open, but there was glue inside. So, you know, I'm just asking him about, you know, what type of glue it was in there, because I'm trying to come up with a price in my head. And this guy, when I say keyed up, any little thing, you know, that you were saying regarding the repair process, he would interject with what he thinks the obvious thing is to do, and then he proceeded to laugh after everything he said, like a hard forced chuckle, I would call it. And this was really annoying because I kept my cool. I was just trying to explain to him, well, I'm just trying to decide how I'm going to remove that glue. And he said, well, you warm it up. And well, you know, again, he's telling me what I should do. And then he says that he's worked in every guitar shop in San Diego except for this one. And I'm going, what happened? Every guitar shop. So anyways, this guy was all keyed up and not really a pleasure to talk to. But I wound up taking in the repair, and I knew what I would have to do. I would either have to break it completely, or like re-break it, or I would have to open it enough to try and get sandpaper in there and clean it out good enough. And when I looked in there, I really didn't see all that much glue. In fact, there was more glue on the outside of the neck. It looked like it was done real sloppy with no clamps. That's really what it looked like. And so what I did is I got in there and I put the guitar face side down on my bench, and I clamped the headstock to my bench with an F clamp, and I slowly turned that screw that tightens the clamp, opening up that crack in a controlled way. And then I was able to do some sandpaper pulls and inject some glue in there and clamp it and just see what happened. And if it didn't work good, then, you know, you'd have to take it from there. But get this, the guy wanted 12s on his SG with the headstock brake. Now, that's fine. He said he was going to be playing slide, whatever. But I always like to ease up on guitars like this that have had headstock brakes. I always tell people, you know, you do what you want, of course, but I really wouldn't hang it anymore. And, you know, I'd probably just keep 10s on it, you know. And this guy, he was so keyed up that I didn't want to go through that whole string, you know, conversation. I just thought, you know what, let's do the repair and let's see how it takes 12s in standard tuning. It took it. It seemed fine. This was an SG with one pickup, 2 knobs, and like a mini toggle switch that's coil splitting or something like that. And I also made a new nut for him. And in the end, by the way, this was like an early 2000s SG. It was just abused. It looked cool and it played really good. So that's not the end of the story with this guy. He also had a Les Paul with the neck popped off. That's right. The neck was popped off, not broken off, and he said that a repair shop had it for a year and didn't do anything with it. And, so this was something that I called my coworker on to get some backup, because he reset the neck on my 78 Les Paul Custom. And I knew that he could give an accurate quote regarding this repair. So I tried to tell him that the customer was interesting as we were walking up to the counter. So walked up to the counter, and my coworker was just doing what I did, talking out loud, trying to decide how much it was going to cost. And the customer was interrupting and saying, that if he couldn't do it, he'd just take it to somebody else and do it. And that was because my coworker was saying that it might need fret work and a new nut and other things depending on the angle when it gets glued back. And then, we gave him a number and he didn't like it, and he said it was ridiculous or something like that and laughed, and then said he was going to take it to so-and-so, which none of us have ever heard of this so-and-so that he was going to take it to. And then he walked out the door and left. But I had already taken the SG as my job. But anyways, I just described how that turned out. It turned out fine. I did a hi-fi, an LR Bags hi-fi install on a classical. And sometimes this is the right way to go, because some classicals sound really great. So the hi-fi gives a true representation of what the instrument sounds like, at least in my experience. So if the guitar sounds like crap, installing a hi-fi is not the way to go. I would install the under the saddle. But a lot of classicals have that saddle slot that just goes straight through. And so it's awkward and weird to put any type of under the saddle on a classical. And if you have seen it, you'll see the bridge kind of tilting forward, or I should say the saddle tilting forward. And so anyways, he was down with the hi-fi. And so I installed the hi-fi and it sounded great. I worked on an Ovation that had a fire flame paint job, and the flames look like just cheesy flames that you would see on any, hot rod. And it needed binding work and a setup and the jack. So Ovations have just a standard like jack on the side of the guitar, but towards the bottom bout, not where most acoustics have it, which is on the bottom where the strap goes. This is kind of more by your leg if you're sitting with the guitar. That's where the Ovation jack is. But this one, the strap button had pushed through, and because the bowl was so thin, and it had obviously seen some trauma or something like that. So what I did is I got a wooden block and I epoxied it from the inside, and then I reinstalled the strap button. And he was also having intermittent problems with his jack. And this customer brought in 4 guitars for us to work on. Excuse me. Better take a little drink here. 4 guitars. And so some of his other guitars were having jack problems. You know what that means, right? It means it's the cable or something like that, a patch cable with his pedals or something. And then, of course, the customer always says, well, it isn't doing that with my Strat, or it's not doing that with blah, blah, blah. And, unfortunately, some cables have a certain tolerance. I think, now don't quote me on this, I think maybe like Monster cables don't like some jacks. It's just kind of looser in there. So there is tolerances for stuff like this. So anyways, we told him just to check his system. And then we come to this PRS returner. It's a returner. And this is the customer I call the numbers guy, because he gave me numbers. I talked about it several podcasts ago. But he wants instead of a push-pull, he wanted a push-push. And then he wanted me to adjust his nut. So the interesting thing about push-pushes, I really like the concept of a push-push. The thing is they're always breaking and they're sensitive. But who wants to be playing a song and you're jamming and you're playing and things are going good, and wait, everybody wait, and then you go to pull up on a knob. I'd rather just bop it, just hit it and have it, pop up. And then it's going to do whatever you assign it to do. But the problem is sometimes people bop it too hard and it breaks, or when they're putting on the knob, it can break the shaft. So they're just sensitive, and the pots in there had a treble bleed. And if you know what those are, a lot of times they're like a capacitor tied in with a resistor or something like that. At the shop, we have variable treble bleeds. It's a tiny little circuit board that could really fit in any kind of cavity. And it has a little pot on it that you can adjust with a screwdriver. So you can adjust the amount of treble bleed that goes to your pot, which is super cool. But they're like $15 a piece. And so I didn't want to charge this guy $30 more just to make my life easier. But, those components, not the variable, but the ones that are tied together, they can fry really easy with a soldering iron. And these were installed with very short the legs were all clipped and tidied up. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to try it. I'm going to try my best. And if I fry it, I fry it. I give him a call and tell him it's going to be $15. But I was able to save both treble bleeds and reinstall them. I'm trying to remember. I think he had all new pots that he wanted just anew, which is standard for like an SE. A lot of people want their components changed on import guitars. I think it's Epiphone that started putting CTS pots in their Epiphones, and yeah, I mean, why not, right? How many extra cents? I say why not. It's easy for me to say why not, but the penny pinchers at the factory are going, well, we're doing 1 million guitars and it's 5 cents times 1 million. I don't know. So a regular of the shop, sometimes the shop is kind of like a barber shop hangout for people, and we have a regular here that had me do some work on his telly. So what makes you a regular in the guitar shop? Anybody? How many times a week do I have to see you to call you a regular? I would say 2 to 5. There are some people that are there every single day. They come in from work, maybe they work an early shift or something, and they hang out. And that's really cool. I think it's cool. I think every shop probably has regulars, and that's because we have a really welcoming, friendly environment. So one of these regulars had me put a Charlie Christian Lawler in the neck of his telly, and I told you the episode before that I had done that on my buddy Joe's telly. The same pickup, the same maker, Lawler, in the neck of his telly, same guitar. So things come in doubles and triples sometimes. I guess when you do a lot of work consistently, that's probably a standard pattern that shows up as doubles and triples of stuff. I did a white Strat. I did a fret dress on that, and that turned out really good. And when I say it turned out good, all the fret dresses I do turn out good, or I would redo them until they were good, or whatever. I would solve the issue. That's not what I'm saying. But when I say it turned out good, the Strat played really good, So depending on how much meat is left on those frets, sometimes you do a fret dress and it's a fretless wonder, and I don't really like that. And of course you tell the customer, he'll say this guitar probably has one more fret dress left in the life of these frets before you're going to need a refret. And, you talk to them about it. I've talked to customers and I've said that, yes, what don't you like about it? Yes, you have divots, but you play evenly up the board and there's even distribution of the divots, and I'm not really getting any buzzing, and I'll ask them, are you getting buzzing? They'll say no, but I see these divots, and I'll say, just leave it unless you want really low frets. I guess I always try to be honest with the customer, and I think that creates trust. And of course, that's the best thing. What I care about is the wellness of the instrument and setting expectations and making the customer happy, basically. So anyway, but this fret dress turned out great. I worked on a pink Jazz Master with a rosewood neck. That's right. I thought it was an aftermarket neck with like a laser engraving on the headstock that said Fender, but nope, it is a stock Fender, I guess. And the complaint was it won't stay in tune. And I've been getting a lot of those. This next guitar after this one, same issue. So when it won't stay in tune, I'm looking at a bunch of different stuff. The obvious thing is I always think that the tuners are loose. The ferrules that secure the tuners, I always think, okay, well, I'm going to check those. And then, of course, the cliche, I'm going to check the nut, see if it's binding in the nut. I'm going to make sure that the strings are wound properly. I'm going to make sure that, the bridge is okay and the tension of the springs, all that stuff. I'm going to check it out. Not really tension of springs with the Jazz Master, but I'm just talking in general here. All right. And so this one, the strings had, I don't even know how they were staying on there. They weren't locking tuners. They had like a half wind on there. And so a lot of people think that no winds or low or no winds equal staying in tune better. For me, that's false. A string is going to stretch, and it's going to stretch so much that it eventually breaks, or it's going to catch a burr and it's going to break, or, the bridge isn't returning to zero. It's not the winds for me. And so usually you see no winds with locking tuners. This had like a half wind. I was surprised these strings were even staying on there. So I set it up like I would usually do. I like to see at least 2 to 3 winds. Sometimes if I want a steeper break angle, I'll wind it more, but that's just kind of what I do. This guitar had 12s on a 12 gauge on the E, B, and G. And then check this out. I think it was a 9 gauge because the low E was a 42 on the D, A, and E. Isn't that crazy? It was half 12s, half 9s. And I asked him why. And he said, I don't know. I'm experimenting. I think it stays in tune better or whatever. Surprisingly, I thought it had a cool feel, which is a weird thing to say given what I just said. But yeah, the low strings felt like 9s, and then the trebles felt like ultra stiff. So yeah, depending on what kind of music you're playing, I don't know. Interesting. Then we'll follow that with, I just called it a natural strat, and it won't stay in tune, same as the Jazz Master. And so he wanted, that was just a comment because it wasn't a setup. He had me install Grovers because his tuners didn't have the threaded ferrules. It had just the pressure fit ones, like the old school ones. And there's a lot of slop in those, and there's a lot of play if you actually look at them. And so I recommended Grovers. All his hardware was gold. He said, let's do gold Grovers. So that's what we did. And I said, you know what I'll also do for you? I'll clean out the nut. And I think that'll help you stay in tune. I'll just check it. And so I did that for him, and I gave it back to him. And I think there was just like a confusion in what he thought was done because he said that the action was high. And so, I said that I didn't adjust the action. I just did the tuners. But, while I was in there, I cleaned out your nut too. And if you want to set up, it's X amount more, and I could look at that for you. And he sensed that I was getting defensive, but I wasn't. And he said, I'm just making an observation. I said, okay, well, I'm just responding to your observation. I said, if you want, I said, I don't. And then I said, let me check it out. And I checked it, and it was about 70 thousandths on the bass and 60 on the treble. That's kind of your dream action for a Stratocaster. And so I said, I really wouldn't go lower, to be honest with you. And once I think it sunk in what I said to him about what I did and what I charged him, he said, oh no, it's fine. So, I don't know. But this guy was a bit of a character. Let me paint the picture for you. He was funny. He was cracking jokes. He came to our shop. He drove an hour away to come to our shop and have us work on his stuff. And, Yeah, he was hilarious. Super cool guy, and he said he always wanted to learn riffs from all of us. He heard us playing, when we're setting stuff up, we'll play a few chords, and he says, I'm coming here, I'm just learning from everybody, and, I don't know, but he was a badass player, right? So there was that. Had a silver Squier. I posted this on my shorts. It was ugly silver burst. Ugly. I thought it was ugly. My coworkers thought it was ugly. I was showing everybody, I said, look at this. It's ugly, right? And everyone was like, ugh. And it actually sounded phenomenal. But yeah, it was just an ugly silver burst. And I posted it on my shorts on YouTube. You could check it out and chime in whether or not you think it's ugly or not. I think it got a lot of views. Let me check right here and see. I'll tell you guys, it's a lot for me. Let's see. Well, it's not coming up right away, but anyway, it was like 1.2 thousand or something, a little over 1,000 views. That's good because the algorithm, let me tell you something. Let me get on my high horse now about the whole algorithm thing. For like a month or so, I quit posting YouTube shorts because I was just getting slammed, man. I'd post something and it was like getting like four views. Like 4. Like, are you kidding me? And so I went back to look at what I was getting probably 5 months ago. And, it was well over 1,000 was my average. And so something changed on the algorithm, and it's just... I didn't mean it to let it get me down. It's just an algorithm, but it wasn't worth my time to post something if it wasn't gonna, and then I tell myself, I say, hey, I just like sharing these guitars, sharing all the different ones that I get on my bench, and that's what it's about. It's not about the views or anything, but I do want them to be seen. And so I was bummed that whatever new thing that changed was just burying my shorts. And I talked to a couple people that are very good at getting YouTube shorts to perform well, like it's their job for a company. And it's all the things that I expected. It's the same background is boring, or maybe there's too much in the background, or there's no clickbaity thing, or you have to ask a question and all this stuff, all this lame stuff. That's not what I want to do. I don't know if it's like me playing punk rock my whole life or me being an Aquarius, but I just don't want to do that. I don't want to be like everybody else. I don't want to have these real clickbaity titles. I just want the guitars to get the attention that they deserve, really. And I want people to chime in because it's interesting for me. And I hope it's interesting for you guys. So anyway, that's my rant about the algorithm. I'll try not to do it anymore. But that being said, this last podcast got almost 400 streams on YouTube, which is really freaking cool because that's all organic. And it has more streams on YouTube than anything else. So thank you guys for listening. Continuing down the line here, got a Harmony Dreadnought with one of those adjustable, I'm putting those in quotes, adjustable bridge. And that was in for a setup. And I'm trying to remember if it had a bolt-on neck. I don't think it did. Or maybe it did. Anyways, I adjusted that to the nitty gritty and that turned out good. I think the action when it came in was off the freaking scale, off my scale. And when I say off the scale, it ends at 140 thousandths. So then you just estimate when it's off the scale. Is it 150, 160, 170? But yeah, it was off the scale on both sides, on both E's. I did an MJT body. I did the electronics. This was on a Jazzmaster. I don't know why, but whenever it's an MJT body, like more often than not, if it's on my bench, it's a Jazzmaster. And Jazzmasters have a lot of electronic problems, and it's always like one thing doesn't work. It's usually the neck pickup doesn't work, or the rhythm switch doesn't work, or one of the volume sliders on the rhythm circuit doesn't work. There's always a short to ground somewhere. And I've said it before, if you're not careful, if you're doing the installation yourself, you can screw the pickup screw into the body, and you can screw right through a wire, shorting stuff out. So, and not to mention, it's just like a bird's nest inside there of wires. So, but anyway, I solved that problem. A Parker Fly came in, and this was a really interesting one. Worked on this guitar before, and my coworker, one of the owners of the shop, was looking at it with me, and he was saying that the more he keeps looking at it, the more things he keeps noticing. And he was completely right. As he was saying that, I was staring at it, just noticing more and more things. You know, the truss rod adjustment was at the bottom. It's one of those spoke wheel things. The whole body was kind of arched like a potato chip. It had piezo saddles. It just kept going. It was, you know, but it was, okay, here's the thing. It was a telly loadout. So, you know, that's something that I would like, you know, so telly bridge, telly pickups, Parker Fly, and he wanted flats on it. And, you know, to each his own. I myself, when I first started playing out solo, I put flats on my Gretsch, thinking it would give a more round kind of, you know, a sound for being the only instrument, just a guitar, right, through an amp. And I cut them off immediately. I just cut them off. They're mud. I don't like them. And however, that being said, I do have them on an acoustic guitar of mine, a Recording King, that I put a magnetic pickup in, and that one sounds like an arch top. Really interesting. So I think it can be used in certain situations. Me in general, even talking jazz, I don't like flats. I don't like getting rid of the tone. You know, why? Are jazz players trying to sound more like pianos? Like, I don't know. Maybe if you're a jazz player, you can weigh in on this a little. But one of the teachers at my shop, he plays jazz, and he plays round wounds and kills. He's one of these guys that if he's playing jazz, he's going to have tone. He's not messing with the tone knob. You're not trying to get it like a muffled sound. It'd be like if I'm doing this podcast like with my hand over my mouth like this. To me, this is what flats sound like. But I'm not saying that people don't get a good tone with flats. You know, if you've got a good jazz pickup in an arch top and you got flats and you're playing out of a polytone and it's that sound and it's that thing, I get it. Or if you want to experiment with flats, who is it to me that say that you won't like them? I don't know you. But again, flats on a Parker Fly, telly loadout, piezo saddles. My coworkers all tried it, really don't dig the flats. But the Parker Fly, super cool guitar. Worked on a G&L S500. I don't care for G&Ls. Their truss rods break. I just think it's the company just really didn't care. And an interesting story, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but a customer was telling me that somebody he knew went by the G&L factory when it was closing, and they had a desk by the dumpster, and the guy who walked by knew that desk at one point was Leo Fender's desk. He had seen pictures and he knew, and he asked the crew that was there if he can have it. They said, yeah, we're just throwing it away. And so it's so interesting. So that's kind of what G&L thought of its legacy. And, you know, Fender, of course, should have picked up on that. And so, you know, I don't know what's up with that, but it reflects on the G&L guitars. I don't know. They just don't do it for me. I think the pickups are interesting. They're extremely hi-fi. The MFD pickups are really interesting. But yeah, not my thing. I put Epiphone Bigsby, and I'm trying to remember what that was. It was probably a Bigsby. Oh, okay. This is what it was. It was like a 335 Epiphone Dot, and the shop bought it. And to make it more sellable, I threw a Bigsby on it. How do you like that? Will it make it more sellable? I don't know. We'll see. I did another guitar from the Univox guy. We had a Univox Ripper, but somebody had painted it red, white, and blue. not the cool Buck Owens way. This was very crude. The back of the guitar was black. The front was spray painted red, white, and blue. And we posted, I set it up. It actually looks really cool in pictures, which is why we posted it for our 4th of July post. I did work on a Badass from the Univox guy. That's Badazz. It kind of looks like an SG. I set that up. That's a really cool one, man. Those pickups sound really good. My friend from the band Deadbolt, Gary, dropped off his Univox copy. It was a bass. And he dropped off 2 instruments. He dropped off the Univox bass and a Squier bass 6. So we'll talk about the Univox, Univox copy. I think it was in Eastwood. It said Univox on the headstock, but it was obviously like a new, import. So this guitar, this bass, I could not get it to stop buzzing. I just couldn't. And that's one thing he wanted, the action lowered. So the action was sky high. The neck had a crap ton of relief. And so, the first thing you do is you straighten out the neck. You put the action roughly to where you would have it and check it. And it was buzzing. And you're figuring, why. Then you give the neck just a little more relief. And you're probably looking at the nut thinking, okay, it's probably, maybe a little high with this amount of relief. But you're checking to see, what's its limit? When is it going to stop? And then you even go around the world, I call it. You wind up raising the action until it stops buzzing. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe it never quits buzzing. So finally, I took the neck off and there was a metal washer about, an inch. It was like big in there. And usually a shim will span the length of the bottom of the neck. This was just right in the middle, dead center of the neck pocket, causing a weird twist. So I put, because I liked where the saddles were, height-wise, the screws weren't hitting your hand. And so I put a shim in there that was the thickness of that washer, but spanning the whole bottom of the neck pocket. And buzz gone. Seriously, buzz gone. So that's crazy to me. Also, this reminds me, so one time we had a Mustang in and we popped the neck. We popped it because we were trying to look at the date, and that's something we'll do to try to date the instrument or see if it's, authentic or what the deal is. So this Mustang had pins in the neck pocket in strategic places, like it wasn't making a triangle or a shape. They were in very specific places, and it wasn't sticking out, far. Each pin was sticking out it was very specific. And yes, the pins were indenting the back of the neck too, but I could only assume that, some engineer had seen the twist in the neck and, it doesn't have to be an engineer. Maybe this was this repair guy's thing, but he was like taking the twist out of the neck with strategically placed little pins. Very interesting. So yeah, the shim has a lot to do with everything, long story short. But in the end, the bass played great. Gary also brought in a Squier bass 6, and what he wanted was a stay trim bridge, and he had brought it in. And this bridge, apparently it's the proper radius, and there's also more length to set the string length compensation. And this Squier bass 6 played amazing. I let my coworker play it. He said, I want this bass. I want one. They don't always play good. This one played really good. They're always a little buzzy when I say don't play good. The necks can be hit or miss. And there's always some weird buzzing happening with the bridge. So that is a huge, not a sponsor. But yeah, that is a huge, if you're looking for an upgrade to your bass 6, the stay trim, I think, is a solid option. I did work on a Coral Hornet. It's from the Univox guy. This one I had to dial in the bridge. So when I say Coral Hornet, think Dan Electro, cool offset shape. And so it has that little rosewood piece for the bridge. So I needed to file that a little bit and adjust it, and that thing's set up, and that thing sounds really good. What's on my bench in my shop? I'm still dialing in my spray booth, the ESP that I'm painting for my buddy. That's going good. The black is laid down. I laid down my coats of clear, and that went good. So the stage I'm at now is I need to do level sanding, and then I'm either going to spray a couple more coats and call it, or depending on how the leveling goes, I might do another 8 coats. So we'll see. And then it's doing the final sanding and buffing. So I made a lot of headway with my CNC. I got the bed for the CNC, which is some pretty thick MDF, and you have to cut it to the length, obviously, and screw it on your CNC. And then there's the waste board, which is also similar to the board I put on the bottom. But the waste board, when it's time to change, it's time to change it, and it's just something that comes along with owning a CNC. So that's exciting. I've been working really hard on getting that done. When I watched some YouTube videos on it, this one guy was like, it took me, it wound up taking me, a couple weeks. I thought it was going to take me a couple days. This has taken me a few months, I think, maybe more than a few months, but it's been a process. It came from Canada in just a bunch of boxes, all the bolts, all the rails, all the pieces, all the stepper motors, the computer, everything. And so, I'm pretty technical. I'm good at assembling stuff, but it was hard. I'd say it was a challenging assembly. There was a video, a step-by-step, but they missed some things, so you have to read the manual and watch the video. But the good part is, once you assemble it, when a part breaks, you feel confident replacing it. And so I'm pretty stoked on that. So here we go. It's time for everybody's favorite part of the show, customer stories. All right, so let's talk about the good now. The customer that came in and had me dull his 330, he liked it a lot. He liked it so much that he wants me to now dull his telly. And he brought in this natural telly. It has like a maple flamed top, and I think it was ash or alder on the back. It was gorgeous. It had a Filtertron in the neck and a warm-off neck. And he wanted me to basically, he brought in a black body with nothing assembled on it. So he wanted the black body dulled, the neck off the natural telly on the black one, and just traditional telly loadout. He called it his traditional telly. So I did that, and I have to say that the dulling turned out really well using the pumice powder. One thing though I think about any satin guitar is once it's satin, the oils from your skin and stuff, instead of wearing, showing wear, it shines it. So that's interesting. That's just something to keep in mind about satin finishes. Okay, so I have a little update on the amp guy who turned up his amp super loud, and that whole debacle. I call him the Slayer amp guy because he's wearing a Slayer shirt. Well, it turns out somebody called our shop and filled us in on some stuff. Apparently, he allegedly, because this is all secondhand stuff here, but he stole an amp from Guitar Center, and now the cops are looking for him. So there you go. I have my uncle Bob lives in Arizona, and he took his L5 to a guitar shop that's pretty respected over there, and he wanted a pick guard that he had bought fitted for his L5. And so he showed me a picture and he said, "Hey Kenny, I got my guitar back. This isn't right, is it?" And it looked like they just completely botched that job, where the pick guard was laying on top of the pickup rings in some spots. There were sharp corners. And then I'm not going to say the name of the shop, but I went on their Instagram and social media just to check them out. They're very well regarded. And so I don't know what happened there. He said he paid $100 and he's pretty disappointed. That's what I would have charged, but it would have fit, because that can be a tedious job it's either you have a template, or if you don't have a template, you're making one. one, and you're making one out of MDF or whatever, and you usually take a piece of Mylar and you lay it on top of the guitar and you trace it out and you take measurements, and then if you have some type of CNC or 3D printer, then you're mocking up your template and you're seeing if it fits and you're making adjustments. And when everything is working on your template, then you cut the guard, especially if the customer provided a guard. You only got one shot. And if you mess it up, you're going to have to, make that hard call. Hey, I messed up the pick guard. Where did you order it from? I'll buy you another one. I'll pay for it, and it could be a crazy thing. So for these guys to give my uncle back this pick guard that was just so obviously, it had the cutouts for the pickups in the wrong spot. It looked like they used like the wrong type of template. Like I don't know what's happening that would make them feel okay with giving that back to a customer, but that's what happened. So Bob, if you're listening, next time you come and visit me, we'll sort that thing out. Time for some water cooler talk. Now, I kind of wrote these notes here down for the podcast a couple weeks ago. That's when I was trying to release this, but life. And so I'm just going to read these talking points as I see them here. Not really warmed up on them, but let's see. I got something to say about boomers here. It says, boomers, maybe my age reminds them of how much time has passed. Okay, so yeah, sometimes, and again, I want to say not all boomers are rude. In fact, the majority of them are nice, but I notice the rude ones more than the nice ones sometimes, not all the time. My parents are the freaking coolest, and I know others are, and I think it's more of a people thing. I think there are certain types of personalities that span all types of, age brackets. But just, for fun, some notes about the boomers. So maybe possibly the fact that I look young to them, maybe it reminds them of how old they are, maybe, to play psychiatrist for a second. I don't know. And maybe that upsets them. And, I don't know. Here's another talk. Feel free to weigh in on that and tell me, if you work, if you have customer stories, if you work customer service, which age brackets are the rudest to you and why? How does Gen Z act versus boomers versus whatever? And so here's a talking point about, influencers. Man, I think I took a screenshot. This is perfect because I saw this and I thought to myself, why? Oh, okay. Yeah. Here's a perfect thing. So here's my talking point. Why don't influencers review guitars from custom builders, encouraging the beginner to start with a custom handmade instrument instead of the best bang for the buck? And so, yes, so I think most people are assuming if you're a beginner that you need to start with something cheap and you need a bang for the buck. And when I say a custom builder, I'm not talking about Saul Cole. I'm not talking about TK Smith. There's somebody in your neighborhood, somebody around, depending on where you live, a woodworker, maybe somebody is building guitars. You've seen them on Marketplace or whatever. And but the reputation, I think, is key to make my point work. It's kind of an if and only if. I think you can get a custom-made instrument, and it would be great to learn on because of the attention to detail. I'm not talking about going up to some woodworker in his garage that doesn't know about guitars saying, make me a guitar. I'm talking about the guy that could make you a guitar for maybe $1,000. And I think that's reasonable if they don't have a name or that much of a following, but they've made guitars and maybe you even played them and maybe your friend owns one and it's a good guitar. I think it's an interesting to reframe the, if you're a beginner, do you need do you need a Firefly or an Ert with unnecessarily like stainless steel frets, as if that's something that's going to make or break your guitar playing as a beginner? So this screen grab that I just screenshotted, and I'm sure your guys' feeds are full of these from influencers. It's showing a guitar that looks like a Les Paul, and the guy on the front is kind of pointing to it, and it says, Gibson can't compete. And so it says the 2 reasons everyone loves these guitars. So obviously I checked it out. He's talking about a guitar that's not a Gibson, that's in, a cheaper price range that I'm sure he's going to say is better, than a Gibson, or better bang for the buck or whatever. But I just want to put out there, let's just put the custom builder thing aside, and just work with this kind of more simply. I think if you're starting out, I don't want to assume everybody can't afford a used Gibson or a used Fender, or, I think that might be the way to go, honestly. And from my shop, that's what a lot of people do. It all depends on your budget, and I can tell you that people's budgets are different. Not every beginner or starter can't afford, a $500 guitar, a used Fender or something. Because here's what I think is really important, that if the guitar plays nice, you're going to want to play it. If it looks cool, you're going to want to grab it. Even though that's vain when you're starting, I think that's important. Who are some of your influences? What are the music you like to listen to? Oh, you like to listen to Led Zeppelin? You should check out this, Les Paul Studio, Faded or whatever. You could pick those up for anywhere from, I don't know, $7 to $9. That's a good, if you have the money. We do layaway, and our website has a firm, and sometimes if you're serious enough to buy a serious instrument, I don't think you'll regret it in the end. And I don't really like to mention this because it's not what it's about, but if you decide guitar is not for you, selling a Les Paul Studio will be a lot easier than selling like an Ert or Firefly or something like that. So that's all I got to say about that. What do you think? Do you guys agree or disagree that influencers just stuck on these cheap guitars that, I don't know. Anyways, gold hardware, what do we think? Do you like it? Do you not like it? I'll say for me, I don't like it. There's a Firebird that just came in the shop. It's like Campbell Soup red, and it's got the most shiniest gold hardware. I think it's gross. I just think it looks gross. However, I will say there's a caveat. There's an exception. If it's a black Les Paul with worn gold hardware, like worn out, I do like that. I do like that look. But brand new, cheaply plated gold hardware, not a fan. I had a plumber come to my house to look at my toilet. Now, here's what's happening. Again, this is just some water cooler talk here. So the plumber, I've used him before. He does some of my other family member stuff. So I called him and I told him the dilemma. I told him that my toilet is not flushing all the way, and yes, it'll flush when I hold down the handle, but this is a new thing that just started happening, and I just need him to check it out, tell me what my options are. The fix-it guy in me thinks that I know what's happening. I say, is the water pressure, what's the water pressure like, etc. And so he basically, and my fiance is there listening too, he's basically saying, I tell my kids not to flush paper towels down the drain or down the toilet, but they do it anyway. And he's starting to basically say that he thinks that I'm flushing weird stuff down the pipes and that there's a clog. That's what he thinks. And so I told him, I said, listen, I'm not, I'm living with a woman here. I'm not flushing. She's not flushing feminine hygiene products down there. That's what he said also. I'm not flushing paper towels down there. And so then he got his snake and he didn't find anything. And then he said that it's probably calcium buildup. So he asked me if I have a wire hanger. And actually, I do have a wire hanger, and it's for emergencies. Sometimes you need one for, I don't know, projects, or, you know, sometimes it's just good to have a piece of wire that's stable that you can bend to, you know, do things with. So, you know, I've been saving it. Those are kind of rare. I'm like, wire hanger. Anyways, I give him a wire hanger and he straightens it out, and then he's pretty confident about this. He sticks it inside the hole. His whole hand, by the way, is going in the toilet water. My toilet's clean, but I'm not someone that likes to get toilet water on me. This is his profession, so that's fine. But I'm trying to paint the picture of him being unprofessional, because that's what I thought about it. First of all, you don't just start blaming somebody for flushing things that they didn't flush, you know, unless you have proof. And this whole thing in my head, I think the elephant in the room is he installed this toilet. It was a low flow toilet. And I think he's ultimately very eager to defend his work, even if that means kind of putting me down in my lifestyle and what he thinks that I would flush down there. So now he's pivoted and he thinks that it's calcium buildup in the pipes. So he unbent my hanger and he's sticking it down in there, and he's pretty sure he's going to pull up some calcium, and he doesn't pull up anything. So then what he tells me, he's still going with this calcium thing, that there's some acid, ascorbic acid or something, that I need to put in there and let it be in there for a little and then flush it down, and it's going to clean out my pipes. And he said I just have to buy it on Amazon, and he's telling me all about this stuff. You know, he's not making any adjustments to the toilet. He's not checking the water pressure. He's not. So I'm just really frustrated. And then at the end, it was almost $200 for him to tell me that. And he did say, he did quote what a new toilet would be, but it's like that wasn't the main theme of the conversation. So anyway, I call in plumber number 2, and I forgot about this guy, and he was very nice. We wound up talking music. It was very, very friendly. Anyways, so he had the acid that the other guy didn't have, and he actually flushed out my toilet. Not only that, he gave me for free a bottle of it, and he told me how to use it. And then he made some adjustments inside the toilet, because there's all these levers and stuff happening inside there that will make it flush better. And then he followed it up with saying, yeah, this is a good toilet, but it is low flow. And if you want me to install a better toilet that's going to flush better for your configuration, what you got going on here. And he gave me a list of price options. And then he didn't even want to charge me for the visit. Can you believe that? I mean, it's just comparing two people. And all this is just to make this comment about guitar repair. How would the customer feel if they brought in their guitar and I just started accusing them of, you know, your guitar is doing this because you are, you know, eating a bunch of barbecue and you're getting that gunk on your hands, and you're not, you know, taking care of the instrument, and the gunk is seeping into, you know, your switch, and now, you know, your switch is damaged and your plastics are decoloring, and you know, you know, what if I treated a customer like that? Could you believe that? Especially, you know, it seemed like that plumber was defensive because he installed the toilet. You know, if I had worked on the guitar before and someone brings it in, and then, you know, you start to get defensive, and then you start to immediately just blame them for all the issues that the guitar is having. Like, what kind of customer service? So anyway, so needless to say, I will never use that first plumber again. That second one, he is my ace in the hole. And then he was talking about, like, oh, you're into guitar repair, and do you know this guy? Do you know this guy? And it, you know, he didn't even have to have such common interests for me to like him more. He was very unaccusatory. And, you know, another friend of mine says as a joke what they say in the car industry when you have a problem. They'll say, when's the last time you had this serviced? You know, like, again, kind of pointing to you first. Like, this guitar or this car or this toilet is doing this because of you. I just think that's really interesting. Who cares? Just fix it, you know? Have the proper tools, have the acid, and you fix it. Anyways, stool versus standing. For anybody that works in the trades, guitar repair, whatever, recently my heels have been really hurting. Maybe it's plantar fasciitis or something like that. And it happened last October. I went on a month tour playing upright bass for the Quakes, and we went all over Europe. But, I went from being on my feet all day to, don't get me wrong, performing for an hour and 20 is, especially slapping the upright bass, is very physically demanding. But I'm not on my feet all day long and loading and unloading gear. It's a lot. But I'm not standing as much as I would. So they say if you don't use it, you lose it. I feel like I really lost something there, because I remember when I first started doing guitar repair full time, my feet were hurting to the extent that I got red wings. And even those, it didn't help. Even those cushiony pads, the impact pads that they sell, the red wings, it all wasn't helping. What helped, I think, was just building up the, muscles and stamina to do it. But ever since that tour, my heels have just been hurting. So I want to know, I do have a stool, but it's not the right one. It's not the right height. I was looking on Amazon, and they do have rolling stools that could be jacked up pretty high. And I think I'm going to, for doing a setup, or, maybe I could wind up sitting down for almost half of the day if I'm careful. That might help with my heels, but also stretching. One of the owners was showing me how he stretches, because he had plantars and then it went away. And so what do you guys think and do for that? I'm interested. I bought insoles, Dr. Scholl's. They don't do crap. And then I looked on Amazon, and there's like a gel one, and that one actually I did feel a difference. And I think the difference is in the arch support. Having an arch takes some of the pressure off of your heel. So yeah, marketplace fun. I haven't really had too much marketplace stuff. Some of those projects I talked in the very beginnings of this podcast, I need to finish, and it's hard. If you're busy like me, it's hard to finish projects, but I've got to find the time. But somebody hit me up about a tube amp chassis that I had listed. It's for like a hi-fi or something, and it's an old one. And when I looked it up, it's like in the radio museum. Like, I can't find too much. It's got a killer jewel light. It's got some killer transformers. Probably all the caps need to be changed out. The chassis is there. It probably has some other cool things about it that makes it worth $100 easily. This guy hit me up about it, and then I told him when and where I could meet, and he never hit me up. And then I'm working on that Coronado. The Univox guy gave me a neck for it. It's made in China, but it's a Fender Coronado neck. And so my coworker said I should put some, because the body is routed out for wide range pickups, believe it or not. That was a mod back in the day. And so instead of trying to fill the holes or get creative with pickup rings that I want to, or bring it back to stock, I'm just going to put wide ranges back in there. But I want to put the good ones with those interesting magnets, and I want the real deal. And so my coworker was saying that Gemini makes a good wide range, but this might seem vain, but those don't have any embossed thing on the pickup cover. It would be okay if it said Gemini embossed. I think it would be cool. But I want something embossed for the look. I think I want it to say Fender. So, those pickups aren't cheap. Maybe I could sell some stuff to make that happen. YouTube video work on the Gretsch Corvette. That's like 5% done. I just haven't had the time, but thank you guys for sticking around and waiting for that. If you want to get a hold of me, my Instagram is Kenneth_Hillington. If you want to check out my YouTube channel, and I really wish that you would, check out the shorts that I do. And that's just about all the cool guitars that are coming across my bench, or stuff that we get in that's cool. Stuff I have my hands on that I just want to share with you guys. What is it, a local repair shop that's busy? What do we see? What do we get in? And so that's what I share. And you could see that on my shorts on my YouTube channel at Hillington Guitars. If you want to contact me, I already said my email, allguitarsbuzz@gmail.com. I want to thank listeners, and again, I'm not sure if I want to keep doing this because I will leave people out, and I left one of my good pals, Andrew, out last time. Not this time. So thank you for listening, Frosty, Dustin, Will, Riley, Lori, Jim, Sydney, Chris, Sal, Andrew, Ian. Thank you for listening, and until next time, see ya. Later.